Hey everyone, G Money here, futurist disruptor ape, and your source for all things NFT. You're tuning into the Cutting Edge podcast, where we discuss the importance of the emerging NFT market with culture's most influential people. Whether you want to know about the next biggest drops or just want to know the basics of where to start, the Cutting Edge can help. It drops every week after our live shows, Wednesdays at 7 p.m. Eastern on Twitter. If you like what you hear, please rate, review, and subscribe. Hello, and welcome to the Cutting Edge with G Money, where culture meets crypto. Today, I'm joined by best-selling author and transformative journalist Neil Strauss, most famous for books such as The Game and The Truth, and the first-of-his-kind storyteller Jenkins the Valet, who recently made history by being the first NFT character signed to CAA. Together, they are here to discuss The Writer's Room, the world's first community-generative NFT book. Please welcome Neil and Jenkins. Hey guys, how you doing? How's your day going?
Hey man, good to be here. We flipped it around.
Hey G, how's it going? Good. Super pumped to be here.
Yeah, good. I mean, you guys have had obviously a great couple of weeks leading up to this, and you guys announced the partnership with Neil. I believe it was yesterday, or I think it might have been on Monday.
Let's see. Neil came to our Writer's Room member-only dinner in New York last Tuesday, which was the first time that anybody in the community learned that Neil was our author. We had about 200 Writer's Room members there. I was able to step away from the valet stand for a couple hours and meet people. And then we announced Neil on our Twitter. Man, time is blurry in the NFT space. I guess it was yesterday.
It's funny, a day feels like a month in this space.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. I think that that's why I was like, wait, was it Monday or yesterday? I wasn't entirely sure, but you know, I knew about this for a couple of weeks now, maybe even a couple of months, because I was actually the link that kind of put you guys together. So I guess once we initially had that discussion, Jenkins, and I know you had a short list of authors that you wanted to work with, and I was like, wow, like I actually have been connected to Neil. How did that work once you guys spoke to Neil?
Yeah, I mean, when G Money makes an introduction, it's not something that you take lightly. So we got on a call with Neil probably a few days after you were able to connect us. And Safa can speak to this too, but we probably spent 45 minutes on the phone with you, Neil. And right away, we were like, that's our author. Like, what do we need to do to show Neil that writing this book that might seem a little weird at first could be something that's super fun and could be like a really awesome piece of work.
Yeah, for me as a writer, like I've been in the crypto space since like Scheme It in 2015 or 2016, which I found out about because someone on Twitter actually tweeted me about it. And I said, what's this space? And for those of you who weren't around then or don't know, it was now mostly it was a blog where you got paid in crypto instead of likes, and it all of a sudden it really opened up a way in as a creative into this space without investing actual money, but investing creative capital. And so it seemed we knew 2021 would be the year of the NFT, the way that 2020 was DeFi summer. We just didn't know what it was going to look like. And I would have been having a lot of discussions about, as an author, as a writer, what is the place in this space for kind of published written words. And so when I talked to the Jenkins team here, all of a sudden I thought this is the way to do it.
Yeah, and that was it's interesting because like I think you and I connected, Neil, in around January, February, and I remember we were chatting back and forth talking about the DeFi stuff and the yield farming and all of that. And I remember like we chatted a couple times on how does publishing get affected by NFTs, right? And like you being a best-selling author and very successful in your own right. Before the NFT space, I was like, very much keeping an eye out for opportunities that I thought that would make sense for you. So when I was talking to the guys at Jenkins, and they were discussing what they wanted to do, I was like, wow, I thought this would be a perfect fit for you guys to start having that discussion. So I'm super happy that like it turned out the way it did. Personally.
Yeah, and it's really cool, and it speaks to like a bigger idea for people here. And by the way, like it was that was such a historic time because it was right before the first People auction at Christie's, and like it was right before everything exploded. And that discussion, just everything that you said, just turned out to be very prophetic. And now look how much time has passed. And we met on Clubhouse. I think I was interviewing you with Craig Clemens about the CryptoPunk purchase that we're looking at now, and we just got back from NFT NYC, and it was interesting to see all these sort of new, cult celebrities there and cult figures there that were all kind of came about on Clubhouse, and I realized how tight this Clubhouse NFT connection is, even though we're all on Twitter Spaces now mostly.
The thing that's interesting to me, and that makes, I think, the connection so special that it came from UG, your thread about purchasing the punk and the whole persona, right, that you built was actually one of the first NFT characters, right, that came out, right, and G Money and the punk, or at least the ape with the beanie, are like really one. And which is very similar, right, to Jenkins the Valet. It's a bit different where Jenkins is absolutely a fictional character. I am the valet at the Bored Ape Yacht Club. Like, that's my job. I exist on the Ethereum blockchain, and that's maybe a little bit different than what G Money is. But your initial thread, like, I think showed the world that like what an avatar can be. And then through this character development, that's sort of how we backed into writing, right? And often these things end up being sort of, you stumble into them rather than like setting out to go figure out how to make writing a part of the NFT space. It just happens after you do something else that's like adjacent to it.
Yeah, it's interesting. Like, and that's the bigger point I wanted to make is how this project came about, or how any project I've done came about, and how it may be true for all of us. And it's a lesson for everybody, which is when you're working on something, and even if you don't know what it is or an idea, it's good to talk about it a lot. Some people like to keep it really secret in case someone steals it, but by talking about it, you kind of get the energy going. So me having this discussion with G Money about what I was thinking, the Jenkins team having this discussion with G Money about what they were thinking, or anything, all of a sudden these sort of synchronicities happen, and someone gives you the idea that makes that project or brings that idea to fruition. So I'd really say whatever you're working on that you're excited about, that you're thinking about, that you think might be your next step, like, no one's going to steal it because it's not their idea. And if they do, it won't be as good as yours. So just like talk about it and get that energy flowing in the world, and these things start to happen, just to like pull back a little bit for a principle people can use for their own projects.
Yeah, and I think that's a really good point you bring up, Neil, because I think this like ties in really closely with, I guess, like the backstory and the inspiration for Jenkins, because Jenkins is a floor ape, right? And so
the floor of the floor.
Yeah, so I'd love for you to share that story of how, what the inspiration was, how you came up with the idea, because I know the first time I heard it, like, I loved it.
Yeah, and if I can add to that question, because I actually haven't asked this yet. In fact, one of you guys can record this on Team Jenkins, because you might want this. But yeah, not just that, but just starting at the beginning, your decision to purchase it, and then your decision to sort of use the IP in the way you did. So we'd love the full story.
Absolutely, and the decision to purchase is very intertwined with everything that has come after as well. Safa was early into VAYC, and for those of you who don't know, Safa and I have been best friends for more than 20 years. We grew up together, went all the way through college together. We've basically always done things together, and but Safa was early into VAYC and sent this video, basically a screen recording of his phone, to a group of friends, and it was like 200 apes in his DMs, just messaging, welcome, ape follow ape, right? I mean, Safa's name is C8 follow ape, right? He's never seen an ape he hasn't followed, and that was such an important part of like the origin of the Bored Ape Yacht Club. And I saw it and I was like, this is just, it's absolutely insane. Like, I don't understand it. I'm not sure what's happening here, but there's something really special going on, that all these people are on Twitter and they're like becoming best friends, and they're like, you know, all like in arms for this community. And so I couldn't help but like want to explore it myself. At the time, I think the floor for apes was maybe 0.3 ETH. And I'd been in the NFT space a bit, but been in crypto before that. And so, you know, ETH is ETH. But still, like when you transition into a new part of crypto, every so often maybe some people don't, but I certainly, you know, convert things into US dollars and ask myself, like, what am I spending on this? And at the time, it actually felt like sort of hard to spend $600-700 on an avatar. I just wasn't sure about it, but the community that Safa had shown me was just like so compelling and so interesting. I really wanted to be a part of it. And so I went and I was looking for apes at the floor, and I saw Ape 1798, which became Jenkins, right? Ape 1798 is the ape that you see on Twitter right now. And purchased it, negotiated with my wife. She said she was going to go to Lululemon, spend the same amount. Now she like kicks me and says like, why didn't you tell me to buy an ape? And that night I was looking at 1798 and I was like, this ape is a valet. Like if you pull up at the hotel, you pull up at the country club, like this ape is the ape that shows up and opens the door for you. Like there's just nothing else about it. And so I texted Safa and I said, hey, like, I don't know what to say, but like, I own Jenkins the Valet. Like that's who this ape is. And we should do something with this, because at the time we'd been talking about apes as avatars and as digital flexes, and as people using them as their own profile pictures to show that the ape was an icon, that you are a symbol, that you were a futurist, or you believed in something specific. But there weren't many like distinct, like unique characters that were built around these. And we had an idea that while there were many avatars popping up, we could invest and create a character, and we could create, you know, one of the first characters. And the goal was the same then as it is today, which is just to contribute back to the community. We just wanted to participate. There were so many creative people doing things in the space, some apes, some not apes, but the goal was just to do something that could help do something fun for the community and you know, help in some small way to push it forward. And so we created the Twitter account for Jenkins the Valet. I'm no Neil Strauss, but I've always been a writer. I write every day. And so I sat down and I just wrote about 500 words to introduce Jenkins to the community. I said my mom cried when I got the job as the head valet at the Bored Ape Yacht Club, which is true. I'm an ape from the other side of the swamp. There aren't a bunch of opportunities for somebody like me. I'm not just like putting my feet up at the club. I'm hustling, and I proved myself over time. I always practiced discretion. As time went on, I started doing odd jobs for different patrons. I held private keys. I sold private keys. I stole yachts. I snuck a mistress into the club through a laundry cart. I've done all of that stuff, and I've always kept my mouth shut about it. But the Bored Ape Yacht Club was really growing in popularity. And so DMs were coming in, and people were saying, Jenkins, you know, you've seen so much. Like, we want you to tell your tell-all. So that was the origin story that we posted to Twitter. I sent it to Safa. He tightened it up. He made some edits, and we posted it. At the time, we had about 30 followers. And it just did disproportionately well based off of the following we had. I think it did about 60,000 impressions. We were blown away. We were like, okay, wow. There's interest. Like, people sort of like Jenkins the Valet. And so the next day, we posted a type form, and we said, hey, you know, I'm the valet at the Bored Ape Yacht Club. I've done odd jobs for all of you. Like, we've all worked together. Fill out this form and remind me of the stuff that we did together so that I can tell your story too. And the idea was, how can we help people build their characters? And we got hundreds of responses. People really were invested in this idea that we could help them tell their own story. And so over the course of the next few weeks, We told people stories for them. We wrote stories about the ape father, the head of the ape mafia. We wrote a story about Maui Prime, a robot ape sent back from the future to destroy the Ethereum blockchain. But when Jenkins shows him that he's one of the apes, he just like gains consciousness and, stops. And we just sort of kept pushing and kept writing these stories. And it was always like a credit to the community, right? Like the community would tell us about their apes and we would just bring it to life. And so then that was sort of the birth of Jenkins and also the birth of the writer's room, because the writer's room is just that very premise at scale. It's this idea that we can all come together and crowdsource creative direction and crowdsource IP that's native to this space. And we're lucky enough to partner with like such an amazing author like Neil that we can write, what's hopefully another bestseller.
Yeah, that's incredible. Thank you for sharing that story.
Yeah.
I know me on the outside, we hadn't spoken at that point. I think it was a couple of weeks later that we really connected. But one of the things that stuck out to me was, the engagement that you received, right? And how many people, liked and retweeted your story and how many people were engaged. And that to me, what do you think resonated with people to read and engage with your story?
That's a fantastic question. And Safa, I'm curious what you think too. But I think that, this came up, G, because you asked, you mentioned, right, that Jenkins is a Florian. And I think what people at first gravitated to was that we were doing something. At the time, it was like, oh my God, you got that gold, or like you got a trippy. And there's still like a ton of, there are a lot of gold apes and a lot of trippy apes that I really admire. But the space at the time was really about like objective rarity. And I think what people gravitated to at first was this idea that like rarity is sort of subjective. And that by building a brand around an avatar, you could create a space online that was sort of different than like how like the, the rolled dice came up. I think that stood out to people. I think people respected it. And I like to think that to some degree, like they were entertained by the stories. And so they wanted to read another one.
Yeah. And I think you touch upon a really good point there with regards to like the rarity, right? Like creating IP around an asset, which as we've seen over the last couple of weeks and months, that more and more people are starting to do, and getting that ownership within the NFT community has been super crucial with regards to helping projects get bigger, help them meme. I'm very curious, Neil, like what was it that drew you to the project? And, like what are your thoughts, I guess, on IP going forward and things of that sense of what you guys are working on here?
Yeah, cool. I mean, I love the idea of writing a book in community. Writing's a very solitary act. It's just you alone for, sometimes it's when you're on a deadline, 15, 16 hours a day with you and your computer. And I thought, how cool would it be to do this experiment in writing as community? Like if you think about blockchain or something, it's all these computers communicating for perfect accounting. And the weak link is the people. But let's see what happens now when all the people communicate for perfect creativity. So I got super excited at this idea of writing in community, and maybe the community makes choices that I wouldn't have made, and they may be the right choices. So I love that idea. B, I love the idea of saying, well, we're not about flipping NFTs. We're about like, what if the IP of this NFT is of much greater value than what it might cost, what let's say the price is on OpenSea. And then the third thing is, what about a future where a company is an NFT, that if somebody writes a song, let's say, and they sell the NFT of that song, somebody gets publishing rights to that song, and the fans can become publishers or book publishers, or can become you can exploit these Disney characters, and like the repercussions. I mean, first of all, there's no plans to, we have so many plans and ideas to go way beyond even what's been discussed with this project for years and years to come if it all works out. But but the possibility, it just opened up a window of kaleidoscopic, exponential, limitless possibilities of what could be done. And that's what excites me as a person.
Yeah, and I really think like the really interesting thing there is the like to your point is like the IP that gets opened up, right? Like, because to me it all starts from the storytelling, right? Because it's like if you can tell a good story in a book, then you know the book deals come, the TV deals, the movie deals, the video games, the merchandising, but it all comes from like being able to tell a really good story that engages, the consumer.
That's exactly it. And what if all the IP is owned by the NFT, not by, again, this is not this project, but just theoretically, if it's all owned by the NFT and not by a company, and that NFT, it can be transferred, and it really brings up great ideas. And also, let's talk about storytelling, right? Like, how does storytelling add to the value of NFTs, whether it's an NFT project or an individual NFT? And let's go even further, kind of out on a limb, but storytelling is everything we're attached to, every brand we're attached to. They're all about, stories. So how much does the story add to the value of what we're doing? I had a bigger point that I forgot, but it'll come back in a second about storytelling. I remember what it was. It was it was about what is the Mona Lisa, why is the Mona Lisa the most famous piece of art? That's just a story. There's so many stories that give things the value. And I was going to give an example of a Stradivarius. I was over at a friend's house. His wife's a violinist, and she had a Stradivarius, and she played it. It was so beautiful. I said, "How did you get a Stradivarius? It's worth millions and millions of dollars." And she's like, "Well, I play on film soundtracks with world famous rock bands, so they loaned me the Stradivarius to play it in these contexts. She plays with the Rolling Stones, with Mick Jagger, for example, and that adds value to the Stradivarius. It's not like, and so that story adds value, and it's true in the material world, and it's true in the digital world."
To your point, Neil, about the value accruing back to the NFT and to the community, right? In our case, in the writer's room, rather than like to a human or a business. Safa and I say all the time, like Jenkins is the most illiquid ape that there is, right? Like we could never sell Jenkins because Jenkins is the one doing it, right? Jenkins is signed to CAA. Jenkins is working with Neil Strauss. Jenkins is is working with Neil on the debut tell-all and all of these future things. And that the community can come together to do this. So value accrues back to membership in the writer's room, and membership in the writer's room is represented with the pass to get in, which is also an NFT, and all of those different things. I think that that's something that we're super excited about. And what I think is, most special about this whole thing is that like, it's not us. It's Jenkins the Valet, this character who happens to have been born on the blockchain via a BAYC mint, right? And Ape 1798 existing, and then him coming out of that. And I think that we hope that dozens of more people do the same thing, because I think it's really special.
Yeah, that's an interesting point right there. I just want to pause for 1 second because I want to let people that are listening in live to claim their POAP. They can do it by going to g.money/POAP, where you can claim today's episode featuring Jenkins and Neil. And that'll be available until 7:45 Eastern, so for another 20 minutes or so. But I guess, Jenkins, like since we just started talking about it, I want to talk about what's the experience like as a holder of the NFT? What's the experience like in the writer's room? What does that look like?
Yeah, so the writer's room sort of means two different things. One, the writer's room is the whole community. And then there's literally a writer's room, which is a custom built voting portal that we built in-house. So if you hold a writer's room NFT, you're in the community, and it means a few things. You can vote on the creative direction of the story that Neil is writing. So Neil will basically be, he's our author, but he's also a bit of a guide, where as we do things together, Neil will say, "Oh, you know what? That really needs to be decided by the community. And so he will create a proposal. It's very DAO-like, where he'll create a proposal, and then folks in the writer's room who hold our NFTs can vote. And then the winning vote is the direction that we take it in. Members of the writer's room, it's a bit of a club. And so in that club, we're also licensing avatars back from our club members. And those avatars will appear as the characters in our content. In this first book, we've got members of the writer's room who hold our rarest tier. They hold yachts, and they will be written as characters in the book. There is another tier where they'll be illustrated in the book, a slightly lower tier where they're going to appear into a game of Where's Jenkins on the inside back cover. And then the lowest tier, if you license an avatar to us, they are acknowledged in the work. And in future pieces of content, the premise will stay the same, but obviously the way the feature works is different, say on in an audio only medium or something versus the way it manifests in a book. But members of the writer's room can also participate, and they can include their avatars in the work itself. There's a bunch of really fun stuff. Neil, do you want to talk about some of the ways that you think of like Discord and just like community engagement as storytelling as well? Because that is very much a part of the writer's room.
Sure. Yeah, I think it's really again, it's sort of everything's improvisatory, which I love. We're all of us here are part of our voices developing, this new ecosystem in this new world, and that's part of the excitement that we're all here. It's not something that's been established. They're not established rules of how things are done. Could always be a new innovation protocol. Maybe somebody you're developing it tomorrow that changes the whole space. So what we started doing on Discord is doing these chats with myself as the interviewer and Jenkins as Jenkins, and it's almost improvising the book with the community, and they'll jump in as their characters. It just happened automatically. They start jumping in as their characters and speaking as their characters, and then we're thinking, let's put that in the book. We're getting that character's personality down, because the people who hold yachts in their sort of the yacht, the NFT they're doing, get a significant role in the book. And so this is helping me figure out their personalities, how I'm going to work them into the book, and everything else. So it's a really cool process. And again, like, I do things not because they're going to be big. I do them because I enjoy them, and I think that's true of everybody here. I mean, Jim, that's certainly when you're excited about something, it's the excitement that moves you forward, not the profit.
100%.
Yeah, I totally agree. I have two quick questions. So one is, will the characters in the book only be Bored Apes?
In this first book, which we think of as an homage to the BAYC, because that's where Jenkins has come from, the characters that will be in the book are Bored Apes and Mutant Apes.
It'll take place in that world.
Okay.
Let's just say. So whatever, and we're still defining the parameters of that world. But I know what you mean. Is there going to be a cool cat in there?
Yeah.
Or something like that. So for now, yeah.
Our future vision is to expand the set of avatars that we tell stories about and that we include to a much wider set. And we're super excited about that. The first book is a hat tip to the BAYC. It's also the terms that we understand the best, right? Like this is a really creative work, but Safa and I say all the time, like, it's probably more a legal project than anything else, because this is an example of mass IP licensing, right? There are going to be thousands of licenses that we sign. And we're very confident that we have an understanding of the BAYC terms, first of all, because on paper, they're very generous. And second of all, because coming from the BAYC and Jenkins, even back in June, won a community grant from the BAYC. We know the founders decently well, and so they've been a sounding board for us as this project has grown up. And so we have a level of confidence moving forward to license those avatars. And next up is going out and making sure that the other projects that our community cares about have commercial rights agreements that actually that work for us, right? That we can use.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I know when we first spoke, I did not see it in that light. And I know through the conversations that we've had more and more, it definitely has been, it's almost like you're creating a sort of Web3 framework for licensing, which I think is super exciting for not just BAYC, but pretty much every project out there.
Yeah, and if I could just jump in, I know I've been a little quiet, but one of the greatest compliments that we got about this project is that this is the exact type of project that is meant for Web3. in terms of how the content is created. It's truly community generated. And then also is just like the economics of it, right? It's like customers are no longer customers, they're partners and collaborators. And so, we're really proud to take that stance and license characters from the community and make sure that they see upside in this as well.
Yeah, I think that's a super interesting model that obviously Web3 makes possible that you didn't see in Web2. One last question I had before we move on from the actual writer's room, the process is how interactive is the DAO, in the voting? Is there only certain parts that you guys decide that they vote on, or is it if there's quorum, or how does that work with regards to the creative process?
Yeah, so there's a couple levels to it, and it's actually not at the moment. It's not a formal DAO. It's just a collective of holders, but they're part of the entire process, and the beginning of the process is more conversational. It's more improv. It's sort of what Neil described a few moments ago. We're planning on holding a series of interviews where everyone is in character, right? It actually happened in our last town hall. We spent 45 minutes in town hall all being in character, right? I was Jenkins, Neil was the writer, Captain Trippy came up to speak about how in his role as one of the main captains at the yacht club, even though I was taking this risk to tell all these stories that I had previously promised to keep quiet, he still had my back because he respected that, from my position, I was coming out to do this. And we talked about the underground rave scene at the club and all these things. And that just comes up organically. And if you are a member of the writer's room, you get to participate in that process. And so even where ideas are sourced from comes from community engagement. There's the second piece, which is the actual software platform, which is a little more tactical. Some of the questions and proposals can still be quite open-ended. I'm not sure that this will be an exact thing that we vote on, but an example of something that can be both tactical and broad is what should the genre be, right? Should it be a heist or a murder or something else? That's just an example. But that's more as we've made progress, and maybe even as some pages have been written and we're deeper into it, you come to a fork in the road. And at that fork in the road, we use our platform to put forward options that Neil says, hey, this, I could see this going in a few ways. And maybe someone from the community says, oh, but what about this fourth way that you haven't considered? And then those four things get packaged up, and the community also has the opportunity to figure out what the next step should be at a point in time in the story.
And the goal, just to jump in, is really not to do a book as a gimmick, we're going to make these decisions and we're just going to follow. And the goal is can we write a better book this way? I was saying, and I told him at the beginning of the project.
He always goes back to that North Star, is how do we use the community generative nature to actually create a better book? But to your point, within the software platform that we've spent months building out, it's really robust. Everything from licensing and providing a backstory to your character, officially signing the licensing agreements, which we spent months with our lawyers working on, to submitting a proposal. So in that way, it is very DAO-like, right? You can put forth an option, you can select a question as well as multiple choice that you want to provide for the rest of the group, as well as vote on the best proposals that do end up being surfaced. So we knew that just doing this in Discord or just cutting corners probably wasn't the best route, and we could have launched earlier had we not built out this incredibly robust platform. But it's really the cornerstone of the writer's room, and it's going to grow with new features sort of with every project.
Yeah, that makes total sense. Have you already had? Oh, sorry, Neil. What did you want to say something?
Oh no, it's all good. Go ahead. I think Safa said it perfectly.
Yeah, I mean, have you had I'm sure you've had a ton of other people start to approach you about using the tech as well, or are you still in the proof of concept phase?
Yeah, we had someone reach out earlier today and ask that. It's definitely not something that we're opposed to. We believe that this is a very open source space, and we want to push it forward. That being said, we feel most comfortable with the world seeing it through our project first, and doing the work in that sense. And then, maybe once the book wraps, or who knows, maybe even halfway, we would license it out. We've spent a lot of time building it out, so it's definitely an option. And Jenkins, that's sort of his world. So him and the team that we've built around him have left no stones unturned in terms of like what we can accomplish with this.
Totally. I mean, one thing that makes Web3 so special is that, and I don't mean the protocol, but more just like the space, right? Is I truly live every day believing in WAGMI. And so in that respect, like, we'd be pumped to figure out a way to deliver the platform to another team to help do the same type of thing. But right now we're laser focused on writing the best possible book we can with Neil. And that means that we need to just stay heads down building the platform in the way that works for us today. And then in time, we can do the work that it takes to make it scalable to like other groups and things like that.
It's awesome. I got a question for all of you that I'm curious about. But I'm curious, when I look at the communities of punks, of apes, of, let's say, cool cats or something else, I'm wondering if you were to say, I'm just going to ask this as an open question because I'm curious. If you were to say what makes each community different outside the avatar, the ape community is more like this, the punks community is more like this, and so on. I'm curious what you all would say.
Oh man, I think that's a good question. It's really interesting because I think every community is very different, but still we're all the same, right? Because we're all in NFTs. And I very much agree with what you were just saying, Jenkins, is that I think if anybody is in the space right now, like WAGMI, right? Like if you're here right now, like you will make it. I firmly believe that. There will be ups and downs through the bulls and the bears, but I very much believe that we're at the beginning of something that's going to change society forever. But when I look at each individual community, I think it's great because people are able to find the communities that really resonate with them. I think punks in general have become like the OGs in the space and the quiet older brother that just kind of like hangs out. The Bored Apes, to me, are like really taking the world by storm. And I think it was really obvious last week in New York where, I really do feel like apes took over Manhattan. I'm not sure what your guys' experience was on the ground, but to me, it's like those are the two biggest contrasts with regards to the communities that I've seen, most differentiated. And obviously there's a lot of other communities that are smaller and bigger and, open source and whatnot. Like, I love the Toads community. I love everything that the Nouns are doing. And, I just think it's super interesting to see how each of these communities, although we are all Web3 native and very much pushing forward the narrative, we all are very different, somewhat different when it comes down to it.
Gee, I think you hit the nail on the head in terms of like how you categorize each of them, and they all have their own sayings, their own, for me, like, what I think is so cool about BAYC is like the entrepreneurial nature of it. I think, from my own like bias standpoint, I think you see more people like with apes doing like side projects with others. I think when I think of like cool cats, I think it's like all about positivity and like just good vibes and like they're cute and like they love, they're always talking about how much they love milk and like it's just fun to think about. And Neil, I think, as we continue to like work together, hopefully, on this project and beyond, like we view Jenkins as the unofficial storyteller of the metaverse that can move in between all of these different communities and share stories and blend in and witness things in the same way that he did at the BAYC. So really putting ourselves in all of these communities and learning their phrases, what makes them tick, what they love. It's just a really fun exercise that I think is going to be huge for the Jenkins brand.
Yeah, awesome. I almost describe it at the Jenkins the Valet room as a cult within a cult within a cult, being NFTs, apes, Jenkins, right?
Yeah, and then the last thing I'll say is I hope as we talk about this, it rings true, like why we wanted to work with Neil and like why we think it's such a good choice, because Neil in his career has dove deep into people, subcultures, and has come out the other side, knowing how they think, knowing how they write, and like becoming them. And that's what this is. Like we're crafting the Jenkins brand sort of like brick by brick. And so there's no one better to actually build that voice than someone who writes books for other people for a living.
Hey, Neil, have you ever been in a cult that's been deeper than this?
Oh, yeah. I mean, depends how you define deeper. This is the most excited cult, let's say. You know, but I've been at like mafia dinners in like Reggio di Calabria. I've been like in like the ballet funk, like kind of this sort of like parties in the favelas of Haiti. I've been in the craziest places. Yeah. But now I guess I'm going to the digital, these digital places. But for sure, like I said, the level of excitement in FT NYC and especially at the writers' room party was like a next level of excitement. So it was all there. Also, by the way, I want to give a shout out to Adil here, who was my first friend on Steemit, who helped me do a really cool, fun thing, which was this is totally off the subject, but I was thinking, how do I do this now? But we did a book club together where people read Ulysses, which is my favorite book. It's Why I Write. It's by James Joyce. And everyone who read it we would post every week with the book club, and the post would garner rewards on the platform. At the end, we kind of split up the reward among anyone who finished the book. About 3,000 people started with us. I want to say like 30 finished it, something like that. But those rewards they got for reading Ulysses are probably equivalent today of like $30,000 in Bitcoin if they moved it into Bitcoin then. And I was just thinking what a cool world this is, where as the audience is the one that's got you're being paid to read, you're getting the IP to exploit when you buy these things. And I love that everything's turning on its head. And I'm curious kind of to discuss or think about where that's going next and what's the next disruption in this kind of space we're all in.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a question I definitely want to ask you. But first off, I want to say anybody that finished reading James Joyce very much deserved that $30,000 worth of Bitcoin, in my opinion.
That's true.
It's actually the worst thing about the blockchain is like typically I just lie that I read it, but if you can prove it, then I'm in trouble.
But yeah, you know, like I think it's like a really interesting question you pose, Neil, because I think that I think that this is like the next frontier, right? Is like what happens with IP? You know, how it's interesting because I was on a panel with Quentin Tarantino last week, and he was kind of having like the same types of questions with regards to movie directing and movie making, right? Like, how do you see it as a writer coming from the traditional publishing world? Like, how do you think publishing gets disrupted? Like, what do you think is coming for the publishing world from here?
Off the top of my head, I'll start it for us. But Neil, no one up here has more experience publishing than you do. A book is, by and large, meant to be read and stored on a shelf. And it might spark discussion if someone comes over or something like that. But like that's the utility of a book. And ebooks, I think, take you to a slightly different place. And there have been some books that have been published online that have been slightly different than just like, read it and then you're done. But in the NFT space, especially if we bring a book forward as an NFT, there's so much more we can do, right? There's like layers to it that are different, where the book can be read, it can be interacted with, the book can be, it can be destroyed, right? And that could mean something else. There's a whole bunch of things. And I think that in that regard, there are opportunities to publish books as NFTs that are more engaging for a reader than they would be if you just brought it to the market as just a book and what it is. You can continue the story, and the story can happen in two layers, right? It can happen, the writing and the reading exist in one place, but what happens with the community in the space interacting with the NFT can actually be like a continuation. And that's something that we're super excited about.
So then you're saying that you are, I mean, I don't know, do you have plans yet with how you're going to release the book? Like, are you going to be going to your traditional outlets? Are you going to be releasing as an NFT? I'd love to know more about that?
Yeah, we're gonna do both.
Okay.
We're gonna release the book as an NFT, and that book NFT is actually going to serve as a bit of a catalyst for the future of the writer's room, and we're super excited about the utility that will come off of that NFT itself. But what we're gonna do is we suspect we're going to write an amazing book, and we think that people are going to want to participate in the story and read it and consume it and hold it as an NFT. And that alone, or that plus the work that we're doing with our agents at CAA, sort of in conjunction with this process, we hope to then take it to traditional publishers and come to market with like a proper book. And so the book will exist on two different levels, and holding the traditional book might get you perks in this space that are different than holding the OG NFT book. And so we're going to basically attack on all fronts.
Yeah, and so I assume that the let's say the uptake that you're going to have from the book, just from the community itself, is going to give you a lot of leverage with current publishers. Could you just kind of go over that a little bit? Because I really do feel like I know we were chatting. I'm not sure if it was yesterday or last week about like what a best-selling book is in the space, and like it's not like as high as I would have thought, like not coming from the book industry.
Yeah, and again, Neil can speak to this better than anyone. So Neil, jump in if you want to. But what we've sort of spoken about with our agents is that a book is considered what the record industry would consider like a platinum record. If Jenkins, if it sells 100,000 copies, right?
Yeah, exactly. Call it $25 a book.
Exactly. So our plan, and we think that we can do this, is to release, as Jenkins mentioned, purely NFT books to start. Release an amount that we're really, really confident that we can sell, that will also give us a large amount of leverage. These are obviously going to be, they're not going to be $25, assets. They're going to be a little bit more expensive. We're not ready to release, the price yet, but we're gonna, what we believe is going to be a really, really successful sale, and then immediately go approach publishers and have a conversation with them that sounds something like, this is what we did in 48 hours. And this is why it translates to like a really successful, relationship with you. And so we think that we have a plan that will like set us up for success in the traditional world by starting really, really true to the NFT world in a release that like is what this market has come to, appreciate and is used to.
It's interesting because the traditional world, like you guys have the wag me kind of sentiment, but the traditional world doesn't have that. The traditional publishing world doesn't have that. I'll give you an example. I won't mention names, but a publisher signed somebody who's a very, very famous person, and this very famous person wanted to do a podcast. The publisher said, well, you can't do a podcast because that's going to be competition for book sales. If you talk about the same stories on the podcast, even the book, this is going to be a problem. Yet at the same time, the same publisher signed a popular podcaster for a lot of money, and the logic doesn't hold up. It's like, oh, you can't do a podcast, that's going to be competition. I'm signing this podcaster, and they literally think everything's competition. Instead of seeing that this celebrity does a podcast, it calls more attention to them. People will still buy a book. They see everything as a sort of threat to their sort of ownership of this IP. And consequently, and for anyone who's in the creative space, record labels work the same, film companies work the same, all of traditional entertainment works the same, which is anything else you do, but this project or promoting this project is a threat to this project. When of course the only reason you got there was by doing shit. So I really think that the way Jenkins and Safa are talking about this, is the way. It is a better model.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think that's it's one of the most interesting things that I've had in my discussions with, let's say, your traditional brands and traditional verticals, as I've been trying to get them to understand, is really having that mindset where if you're going to have sales in one vertical, it's going to cannibalize sales from another. And it's been that's probably been the hardest part of these conversations that I've had, is helping people understand and be like, no, like this isn't going to cannibalize. This is actually going to help increase sales. So I'm super curious as to if you guys have spoken to traditional publishers yet, and what those combos have been like, because I feel like they probably don't understand.
Neil obviously has plenty of times. Jenkins and I have not, though our agents have. They've started to like survey the market a bit and just sort of get feels for like what they would need to see from us and our sort of NFT native sale and metrics in order to have a conversation with them, in order to get a deal done with them. And so we're by no means like structuring our project around that. However, we're building it in such a way where we believe we can like do right by the project, do right by the community, and hit all of our KPIs and give ourselves a lot of leverage like with those conversations, and give this a chance to go live in like more traditional places while still keeping it authentic to the space.
Here's something that goes.
Yeah, people from the publishing. Go ahead.
I would just, something that we don't talk about when we talk about the writer's room is that it's also a community of 3,000 evangelists, right? These are people who came together to write this book together, right? It's 3,000 contributors. And so there's stuff like a book rating on Goodreads. And Goodreads is sort of a notoriously difficult platform to get good ratings on. I don't know, a 4.2 out of 5 stars may be really good on Goodreads. And the publishing community cares about that, right? And anyone who's in the room who reads a lot might be a Goodreads user. We are going to flood Goodreads with 5-star ratings because and that's not a hack. There's just so many people that are in our community today who really believe in this book and who will look at that and say, you know what, that's a 5-star book. We did it. And so there's that kind of stuff too that we think will be really powerful. Like I'll tell you this, if we bring a book to market from traditional publishing, like the people don't ape in the real world the way people ape in this space. And we are going to ape into those books so hard that a traditional publisher will be like, what just happened? And that's something that we're all super excited about.
Yeah, I think it's really cool. It's funny you say that because immediately what comes to mind was Gary Vee, giving, I forgot the exact what it was, but if you bought a certain number of his latest book, you got like a V-friend or a couple V-friends or whatever. And like that was like, a way of utilizing the NFT community in the traditional sense, right? Where he was kind of succeeding in the current model, utilizing the Web3 model, which I thought was super interesting as well.
Yeah, and it's another form of leverage, right? That you spoke to, G. It's like another way that you can say, look, there are ways to sell this content that is outside of the traditional way, and we really believe like it's not. Haters will call what Gary did a hack to sell books, but like that's not it. There's another level to what he's doing, and there will be utility off of the number of books, and it just extends the like scope of the entertainment further than just like the front cover to the back cover. And so we think that is a way to just like make this whole thing like a whole lot more interesting. It makes the customer a holder, right? And a creator and an owner in a way that like doesn't exist today.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Yeah, I wanna be cognizant of your time because I know you guys have to get out of here. But I want to thank you for coming. I want to thank you for coming on the show. Are there any like last thoughts? You guys have anything upcoming that people should be looking for? Like, what are you guys doing that people can get involved besides just, or at this point, is it just the writer's room?
It's just the writer's room right now. We have a ton of ambitions, and we have a bunch of other stuff down the pipe. But this is going to be a really, really big couple months for us, and we're really looking forward to doing something that hasn't been done before. So you can find us, on Twitter at Jenkins the Valet. JenkinsTheValet.com is our website where we go into depth about the project and explain exactly what's going on. Obviously, we're on OpenSea as well. And the next couple months look like us unveiling this portal, beginning to license characters, beginning to take proposals, and getting to work. And it's, this has been like 6 months in the making, and we're really, really excited. And we also have quite a bit up our sleeves as far as like Roadmap 2.0, which we're working on as well. So we're here to stay, and we have a really, really long-term horizon and long outlook. And we're, excited to hopefully keep pushing the space forward and collaborate with folks, and hoping anyone here wants to join the writers' room.
Yeah, so thank you for taking the time. I'm really looking forward to what you guys are working on. Really looking forward to your next book, Neil, because I'm a huge fan of all your work throughout the years, and I think what you guys are going to do is something really exciting, and I think really is what I like to see in the NFT space is people just pushing the space forward of what is an NFT, and I think that this project definitely falls under that category, and I'm excited to be a part of it and watching what you guys do.
Yeah, and G, thank you for your belief in us, and for being a part of what we're doing, and for the intro that led us all to be here.
100%. Thank you, G, and thanks for having us tonight.
Yeah, thanks, man. It's good talking to you, man. I'll talk to you soon, and thanks everybody for listening in.
Awesome. Thanks for tuning in, everybody, and we'll see you next week.
Thank you for listening to The Cutting Edge. Subscribe to stay up to date on our latest episodes. To catch the show live, follow me on Twitter at GMoneyNFT, and tune in every Wednesday at 7 p.m. Eastern on Twitter Spaces. The world is changing. Whether you like it or not, NFTs are here to stay. Community has never been more important, and the opportunities that are coming will impact our culture forever. Join me as we explore the new frontiers of the metaverse on The Cutting Edge.